Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm your host, Josh Pies, and this is the show where scrappy founders, rebellious visionaries, and business misfits pull back the curtain on what it really takes to build something extraordinary from absolutely nothing. No trust fund, no fairy god investor, just grit, duct tape, caffeine, yeah, and that dream. We're talking about the wild, unfiltered ride of turning chaos into cash flow and ideas into impact. So buckle up. This is no Disney movie, but there might be some magic. Let's face it, even Elon started in a garage. So without further ado, let's get to the next episode. Welcome to Bootstrapped Unicorns, presented by C47 Digital Studios. Good morning, Bootstrapped Unicorns. I'm assuming it's morning where you are. If it's not, have the attitude that it's morning. Turn yourself on and let's have some fun. I am glad you're here. As you know, if this is your first time on the show, welcome. And we're talking about entrepreneurship, all things entrepreneurship and things that affect our business life on the regular. And so every once in a while, you just, when you go fishing, you land a whale, right? And you get the big fish. And how big is the fish? The fish is this big. I feel like that today. I feel a little bit like a kid in the candy shop because a brand that I have respected for so long happens to have come into my life because my new friend James is the CEO of Ikan. And if you don't know, if you're not in my industry, folks, Ikan is the premier lighting design company when it comes to, if you want lights to go on the road with you, you want broadcast lights in your studio, if you're going to salivate over lights when you're looking in the shop over at B&H Photo over in New York City, you're going to go to the Ikan section and go, ooh, because it's the real deal stuff. I love this product. And I have, since I discovered it, I think, hey, James, before I fully introduce you, Ikan's from 2006. Is that when it was founded?
Close, 2005.
Okay. All right. So mid 2000s. And I got really into the industry heavily in the late 2000s. So it was just enough time for me to go, ooh, this established company is really cool. And I've loved it. I thought it was an ancient brand because it was so well established by the time I found it. But folks, get ready. Cause this is like, I don't fan out easy, right? You guys know me, but I'm kind of fanning out on the brand just a little bit. But I should always pause and say, yes, this is a sponsored show. And the number one sponsor is my business, C47 Digital Studios. If you want to get into the podcasting space, if you're already in and you're maybe not thrilled with how things are going, your delivery cadence, maybe the style of your show, something's a little bit broken perhaps, or maybe you just tried to start and you couldn't, we're the guys who solve that and help you get your business brand seen and heard more. And there's great strategy and tactics to this. And you can learn a little bit about our method. If you just go to makeitashow.com and download the free ebook, you can learn how we do what we do. And if you're like, ooh, I get it now, you're going to go do it yourself, let me know. I'm going to applaud you and cheer you on. Most people go, ew, because it's more work than you thought. That's why we partner with you to help you handle it. Now, without further ado, buckle up, folks. James Tian is on the show today, CEO of Ikan Technologies. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, Josh. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the warm and great introduction. Deeply appreciated.
Oh, well, you're welcome. It's heartfelt. In all seriousness, when Mac was going to introduce us, I was like, come on. The CEO of Ikan. He's like, no, seriously. He goes, I've worked with him for years. I'm like, come on. Because this is just one of those brands that I really meant it. Ikan's done a good job with your marketing, but also a brilliant job with your technology. So there's just a lot to respect there. Hey, how long have you been the captain at the wheel over at Ikan? You've been in for a bit.
I've been with the company since 2011. I became CEO in 2016.
Got it. Okay. So you've been doing this quite a while. And so again, by watching, you've done a great job. What is it like leading what I consider an industry leader? I mean, how is the role of CEO for you?
It is a very rewarding role. I've been doing it for quite a few years, so I've gotten kind of the lay of the land. The thing I really enjoy about the job is twofold. One is the relationships, both internally leading people as well as externally building great partnerships. Folks like you, Josh, we have a lot of partnerships in the industry, both on the sales and marketing front and also on the strategic front, right? We are not an island. Our products interface with many other brands to essentially create a cohesive studio environment. And so it's the partnerships I've built throughout my career that has been truly very rewarding. And the other part of what I do as CEO is I'm very deeply involved in the product invention and innovation and concept. And so being really dialed into that, having the relationship in the industry allows me to get the pulse on where the industry is moving and where I envision the industry should move towards. And being technical or just technical enough to be dangerous allows me to get into the weeds with my product development team and come up with concepts and deliver results that I think not only enhance and advance our technology and industry, but really truly add value, right? We're trying to build technology not because it's cool, but more importantly, because it adds value. It makes things quicker, faster, easier, better for our users. And that's for those reasons, those are the things I enjoy most about the job.
It's interesting, and we've talked about this in a previous conversation where I knew Ikan as a lighting company because, our company's first iteration almost 20 years ago, we would be doing broadcast media packages out, on remotes, and you guys had some phenomenal, and probably still do, I guess I haven't checked that part of your website recently, remote kits. And durable, great lighting, it really was just top tier. And that segment of what I knew doesn't lend itself necessarily to what I think you're doing now in the sense of almost systems thinking, the relationships that you just brought up and how, you don't exist in a void, but you're part of an ecosystem in any given organization's world. You've got, cameras, computers, lighting, talent, microphones, all these things that exist in order to manifest content of some kind. And it feels, and maybe Ikan's always done this, but it feels like you've really at least doubled down on a systems thinking approach. Does that ring true? And if that is, how would you couch that? How do you describe what you're doing?
Josh, you're spot on. So let me maybe take a step back and talk about lighting, right? Because lighting is such a ubiquitous term. Artificial lighting, control lighting, it touches all of us. You go into any enclosed environment, you're going to have lighting, right? So lights are everywhere, but specifically the type of lighting we produce is broadcast grade or film grade lighting. What does that mean? It means that the LED lights, the diodes that we source have very high color rendering index, CRI. And the higher it is, the closer that light quality mimics the quality and the wavelength of the sun, right? The sun produces the most natural form of lighting. It has a 100 CRI. Our lights approach the quality of the sun in terms of the wavelength and the feel of the skin, the way the light bounces off the skin tone, because ultimately you want lighting to look natural. Some of you guys remember back in the fluorescent days, right? Most fluorescent lights are really LEDs these days, and they're much better quality and they're softer on the skin tone. But back in the 90s, fluorescent lights would make you look green, right? Like you're about to lose your lunch. So broadcast lighting is a special niche of the broader lighting industry, focused on sourcing the highest quality LED diodes that produces the effects of the sun. And what that allows you to do in a closed environment like a studio is to look natural, to look appealing, right? To let the light bounce off the skin tone and your skin to look natural to the human eye through the artificial lens of a camera. So that's what we do. We're very good at it. We've been doing it, like Josh said, for, we've been around for 20 years. We've been doing LED lighting for 15 of those 20 years. And we've gotten really good at that about 2 years into that endeavor. What we've done with lighting is transform the way people think about how lighting should be powered. Lights, for the longest time, plug into walls. That's what lights do. You plug a light into the wall. The thing with wall outlets in a studio environment is that we need so we produce these high quality, high CRI broadcast grade lighting, and they need to be installed into the ceiling. Okay. And oftentimes we're going into a space that already exists. How often do you go into a room and find outlets up in the wall?
Almost never. And if they are, it's something that was probably not legally designed.
You touched on a really good point, Josh, permitting, right? Lighting typically draws voltage that requires a class 1 electrician permitting to be able to install the outlets in the lighting, in the ceiling. A lot of buildings have a lot of restrictions when it comes to adding new outlets into an existing infrastructure. There could be issues with the fact that you're leasing the space and the landlord may not want you to kind of tear up their walls. It could be that this might be an older building, so it could have asbestos. This could be a heritage site building, which means there's additional requirements and permitting needed. And generally, we're finding that some cities and towns and municipals have quite strict regulations when it comes to changing the infrastructure of your lighting, right? And this is all right. This is all about doing installing lighting and upholding the local kind of electrical permit. Because what a lot of people choose to do is not follow the strictest of permits and regulations and put lighting in the ceiling and run these long extension cables and run a second extension cable and do all those things. And those are, for the most part, hazardous to the safety of a building, right? And so that's a constraint that's limiting a lot of, say, folks in corporations, education, and various other kind of office and existing space environments from being able to build a broadcast grade studio.
Well, and those larger businesses can't cut corners as easily as small businesses can because they usually have a safety department. They usually are aware of risk management. So they won't even start a project like that because it's too messy. It's frankly too messy.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just any large or small companies. Any commercial building is subject to inspections by the fire marshals, right? I mean, technically residential are also subject to, but very rarely do residential buildings get fire marshal inspection other than after the initial construction, right? Like I said, we always advise our clients to do what is right and what is safe and to follow all local applicable laws when it comes to fire safety. Very, very important. It's fire safety, there's OSHA, there's all sorts of things that come into play. So what we did was we developed a suite of lighting that is no longer powered by high voltage AC power. What we've done is we've built a suite of lights that are powered by Ethernet. So the same RJ45, those blue, cables that you see plugging into your computer, plugging into your walls, plugging into just the routers, all those things, the blue cables you see in your server rooms in your corporate office. That is the power and the technology that we're using to power our bright broadcast grade lighting.
Well, so I was going to just ask you about bright. I mean, I not to cut you off, but that, these are ultra low voltage in my opinion. I mean, they're very safe and it doesn't really compute based on what I'm used to. The idea that these could be functional broadcast lights. How did you solve this?
Great question. So the IEEE is the org, the nationwide org that sets, actually the worldwide org that sets the standards on power over Ethernet. So 99% of all IT network-based systems follow IEEE standard. Over the past several years, they have steadily raised the amount of wattage that can be passed through an RJ45 cable. Started with 15, then 30, then 60, and now 90.
Wow.
90 watt of power carries a lot of, now it's not that every switch, every router in your home can power 90 watt of power. No, not by any means. These are commercial grade switches, and there are strict requirements of what type of cable can carry 90 watt of power. It has to be generally a Cat 6 or higher. I think these days the highest standard is Cat 8, but it's gone from, a 4, 5, 5E, 6, 7, it's going to continue to progress. And the other thing is the gauge, right? I mean, most of us know about gauges when it comes to outlets and speaker cables. Right? The lower the number, really the thicker and more wattage, more power it can carry. And so there are requirements if you want to be able to pass the full 90 watt of power through a blue, Cat cable, RJ45 cable. And not only that, but the end unit, the switch that sends the power and the data has to be of a certain grade. And so we're talking about industrial grade switches Netgear makes a whole suite of AV grade switches that can carry up to 90 watt of power. So does Cisco, and so do a couple of other manufacturers that you may be familiar with.
Right. So these are like you could go to Staples and get these brands, but you're not necessarily going to get the brands with the industrial grade tech.
Exactly. But now you're like, so these are not home type devices, right? These are truly commercial grade devices. And if you go into a standard server room in many corporate buildings, you'll see the same, industrial commercial grade switches in those buildings already, right? So essentially we're tapping into infrastructure that already exists, right? So now with lighting that can be powered over Ethernet, and by the way, 90 watt of power carries a lot of light, especially for high CRI, ultra efficient LEDs that we manufacture. I mean, we're talking about, so let's talk about this. Ikan's been doing broadcast for many years.
Yeah.
We have a sizable market share of all television broadcast lighting. So there's a good chance in any city in America, you walk into one of 3 or 4 call letters, right? Your local TV station, and you walk into their news studio, there is a good chance that you'll see our lighting fully kind of installed in the ceilings. And most of those are what we call 1x1 panels. So a 12-inch by 12-inch panel with a soft diffuser in the front. So when you look at the face of the panel, it just looks like a white square, right? Like a soft white square. Those lights happen to run on exactly 90 watt of power. And so what we did was we converted our broadcast grade 1x1 standard lighting that is the workhorse of many, many television studios across America, and we converted that into PoE, power over Ethernet. And so now a single RJ45 cable is powering the same light that's lighting your anchors in your evening news. And it's not just power, right? Because at the core of it, that cable is a data cable.
Right. So what else can you do now that you've got the data flowing? There's got to be a lot you can do.
Well, lighting has to be controlled remotely, right? If your lights are in the ceiling, what you don't want is somebody climbing up on ladders to change the intensity or change the color aspect. So our lights are equipped with intensity, like everybody else's light, as well as a color temperature range. So that's CCT, color temperature range. And that allows you to simulate anywhere between 3,200 Kelvin to say 56 or 6,500 Kelvin. What does that mean? Daylight, when the sun, again, we're talking about, right, we're simulating artificial lighting that comes to the sun. So high noon, your color, and if you ever meter the sun during high noon, the color temperature index is relatively about between 56, it's actually at 5,600 Kelvin.
Right.
That's basically high noon. Now, if you're talking about dawn or dusk, that time of the day where lighting looks so pretty and amberish and beautiful, that's about 28 to 3,200 Kelvin, right? And so our lights simulate the range of dawn to dusk, right? Dawn, high noon, dusk. And so with that, you can also control not only the intensity of lighting, but the overall feel. Do you want the room to look like high noon? Do you want the room to look like dawn or dusk? It depends on the aesthetics of the set and what you ultimately want to create. Typically, news likes it to feel like high noon, right? News, bright noon. But like a lifestyle set, an interview set, something like that, you tend to want a warmer tone. It's more like what our homes feel like, right? Typically, if you buy LEDs at the home, you're buying 2,800, 3,000, 3,200, maybe 3,500 Kelvin. You want a warm look in your household. And that's what lifestyle type sets and interviews are trying to simulate. So all those things, imagine lights are in the ceiling. And typically if you walk into a studio, there are dozens of lights, dozens and dozens and dozens of lights. I'll explain to you why you need that many lights. There are many, many lights in the ceiling, and you don't want somebody to climb up a ladder to change the lights. So all those lights are controlled remotely. And now a single data cable is powering the lights and allowing you to control the lights from the convenience of a computer or a physical fader console, which is what when you walk into some of these studios, you might see this giant thing with a bunch of vertical dials. That's a traditional lighting board.
So are you going to traditional light boards, or do you have your own?
We have our own traditional lighting board. We also have our own software, because more and more things are just moving to full IP based. And so more and more people are using software-based lighting control boards. So essentially your computer simulates a physical lighting board with a user interface with those digital vertical faders that you can then, use and control with the click of a mouse.
Awesome.
So the industry is moving towards all digital in that regard as well.
When did you notice? I mean, who had this idea, first of all? It was probably a team effort, but I mean, how did Ikan, put your finger on, what, this is where the world's going and we need to lead the path? Because that's an interesting, anytime somebody's leading an industry, and I know you guys are literally like the only game in town when it comes to PoE for lighting. I mean, it is light years ahead, and pun I semi-intended, light years ahead of all of the competition. How do you identify this? How do you go, oh, this is the direction we're going to dump a ton of time and money into this? Because from a leadership perspective, it's almost mind-boggling.
We do a lot of R&D. I would say most of these ideas and projects that we come up with internally don't make it to the light of day.
How many of them? I mean, are you talking most, like you got 4 going on at a time, or do you have 400 of them going on at a time?
We have dozens of ideas going on at any given time. Some make it to the prototype phase. Some make it to the board design. We start with everything with a concept, right? And then when we get closer, we start experimenting with breadboards. We start experimenting with 3D printed kind of pieces, and we start putting things together. And then only when a prototype becomes viable do we start going through the mass production process, right? How do we take a breadboard design and make it into a printed circuit board? But that's getting ahead of ourselves. Specifically so dozens of projects are always going on at any given time. Many don't make it to the light of day, but we like to do that. We like to, let's just not let reality hinder us from our innovation, right? Let's just design, put things into place. And if it's not viable, we maybe store it away. So in the example of PoE, we actually came up with a PoE light many, many, many years ago.
Really?
At the time, the IEEE standard was only 15 watts. So we were powering a small on-camera light with power over Ethernet. And we thought that was a cool concept. And we all knew that there was some viability to it. And we all recognized that when the IEEE standard for lighting, for power increases to a certain threshold, then we can pull the trigger and pursue the technology. And so fast forward, and this was maybe just a year before COVID. And then fast forward during COVID, we did a lot of R&D working from home because that was what COVID allowed us to do, right? We were less plugged into the dailies and the travels and more plugged into R&D. So that's what allowed us to do. We started developing the technology in its near kind of prototype form coming out of COVID. We showed it at a trade show. It was universally well received, and we knew we had, finally, we knew that this was going to be relevant technology. We just didn't realize how relevant. And as we, officially released the product, and we've heard so many amazing things about our range of PoE lighting. Lyra PoE, Lyra is the brand. Ikan is the manufacturing brand, our parent, the company. Lyra is the category of products that encompass our PoE lighting. We've just, met so many folks who are in absolute need of this technology simply because it was limiting their ability to deploy a successful studio. Without, oftentimes it's the permitting process that kills a project, right? So now you're talking about having to put lights on stands, which limits the mobility and the flexibility of a space. If you have a small space already, you put these giant tripods, light stands everywhere, and all of a sudden it becomes a tripping hazard. You create other hazards, and it really limits the flow of the room. So that addresses that. And then when you incorporate the IP side, the control side, now you're adding the possibility of automation, right? And that's what we've also done. I said at the beginning of my interview, one of my favorite parts of the job is the relationships, it's the partnerships. And so after we developed our PoE lighting, and after we use industry standard lighting control protocols, we were approached by a close partner friend who said, James, I love your PoE lighting. I'm going to put it in a lot of studios. I need you to talk to Q-SYS. And if your audience members don't know, Q-SYS is one of several companies that manufacture AV automation systems. What does that mean? It means when you go into a modern conference room, you typically have, several monitors. You have a computer, you have a Zoom, you have Zoom or Teams running on those computers. You have webcams, and you essentially are, you walk into a modern video conferencing, meeting room. For an average person in sales or marketing or products, they're not tech enough to. You don't want them to have 6 remotes, right? You don't want them to turn on 2 TVs and a computer and do all this stuff. You want them to just go into a room. They're users. They're not the IT staff. You want them to go into a room and have the room ready. But yet you don't want to always hire an army of IT people to come in 15 minutes before a meeting and set all those things up. You want a computer to do that. You want some sort of automation to do that. So Q-SYS builds, they're a cloud-based or the local server-based system. They have touchscreen controls that are focused on events, right? So you want to do this, you want to do that. The events are not, I want to turn on a TV. The events are, I want to have a Teams room. Teams call.
Yeah, it's all event profiles. Yeah.
Exactly. So our friend said, you need to talk to Q-SYS. I have friends at Q-SYS. Let's get you connected, and we need your lights to talk and work within their ecosystem. And so we approached Q-SYS. They were a great bunch of folks. We're plugged in with them. We've released native plugins or kind of APIs that just automatically talk to their platform. So now our lights are hung in the ceiling. Not only are they powered by the same existing data infrastructure, those high-powered PoE switches manufactured by Netgear and other manufacturers, but now they're going to be tied into the same automation infrastructure that already exists. Q-SYS has a commanding market share of office automations, and there's a good chance that when we're pitching our lighting to a corporate client, there's a good chance they already have the powered switches in their building. And there's a good chance they are already running Q-SYS. So in essence, our product is an endpoint. It's a technology endpoint. Our lighting is an IT endpoint that is already fully kind of organically tied into their existing infrastructure. And so that's why PoE lighting has become our best-selling product line, and it continues to kind of advance our philosophy of bringing broadcast-grade technology, simplifying it so that the corporate clients and other institutional clients can operate it and can have success utilizing it. It's ultimately about success. And I'll just add one other context for that. When you walk into a traditional TV studio, you have an army of people in a control room. Literally imagine like a NASA control room, but a smaller scale. That is a studio control room. In that control room, you have a couple of chairs, which means a couple of people controlling the lights, controlling the video switching, the audio, all of the kind of streams, the ingest and things that pertain to that control environment. It's a big production. When you're a TV station, and that production generates the advertising dollar that keeps the station profitable, those are all P&L that are justifiable. However, if you're a corporation, you don't necessarily have the ability to afford that overhead. That's marketing overhead. That's not sales revenue generating overhead, right? That's cost overhead that you invest hoping to generate revenue. And so oftentimes corporations I love to create better quality content, but I can't afford a staff of more than maybe one person or 2 people. And in that case, you definitely need automation to be able to manage the lighting, to be able to manage the audio, to be able to manage the video switching, right? And this is also why more and more broadcast facilities are adopting PTZ cameras. right? PTZ cameras allow a single camera operator to operate multiple cameras versus fixed cameras where one camera has to be operated by one camera operator.
Right.
So
Well, and
PTZ,
with AI tracking now, these PTZs are also tracking, the moving speaker in order to, handle all of this. So you're still, it's very much one operator. You could have 3+ cameras all tracking the right things because we have the automations.
Yes, well said, Josh. Right. With automation, with AI tracking, now you could potentially have no one operating the camera. Let the AI kind of seamless do its thing. And so really you can envision an environment where the control room is fully automated, right? Nobody's in there. It's just the person in front of the camera creating content. So that's the vision that we want to push towards, right? And that's a vision that really appeals to institutional customers, so corporations, education, customers that are not traditional broadcasting, traditional media.
Yeah, it's interesting, the notion of traditional broadcast, because, I think we literally just recorded a podcast this morning. In fact, actually, you signed on as he was signing off. I introduced you guys. And Jeff, he rightly pointed out that YouTube is, for the last 8 running months, the number 1 streaming platform for television consumption in the United States. Things have changed. So the broadcast landscape for what we know is like the evening news, it's not that it's going to go away, but it is in some ways being democratized. So yes, corporate is, the Coca-Colas, the Home Depots, the large colleges and hospital systems, they're all going to be doing this if they're not already. But even the nightly news on NBC is being challenged by competitors now in their own spaces, because they can envision building a studio with your PoE product and PTZ cameras, and they've got their own voice and their own mission, and it'll be consumed on the number 1 streaming platform, which I would imagine is going to be remain in the seat for a while until there's a challenger platform. YouTube has really changed how we consume, and the tech that you're creating and that systems thinking with all of the partners like Q-SYS and whatnot are opening the door for international grade broadcast quality at a different delivery price point between labor and technology. We are entering a new phase for certain. And PoE is, it's kind of poetry in motion, honestly, with the PoE being capitalized, because we're watching, everybody with their own voice, with their own poetry, being able to take center stage, probably for the first time really in history. I would have said probably for the first time in history 10 years ago as well, but I think it's even more real now than it ever has been.
I agree, Josh. I absolutely agree. Corporations, our corporations are still our core business. And so, when I mean broadcast, I don't necessarily mean reporting on news, right? And you are absolutely right. News is being democratized, right? The traditional news outlets are seeing viewership decrease because viewers are moving elsewhere, right? At the same time, corporations and any org, any .com or .org, they want to own their own communications, right? And like you said, YouTube is allowing. What company doesn't have a YouTube page? What company, what non-for-profit, what org, what school does not have their own YouTube page? Why is that so important? Well, it's because they want to be able to deliver their own message directly to their audience, right? You can subscribe to a channel which belongs to a company, an org, a school, and you can get content whenever new content is released. And so that allows each company, each org, to own their own communications, own their own content, own their own ability to address and speak to their customers without having any intermediary other than the platform itself, YouTube. And it's a very approachable platform. Right? So it really has. It's allowed. It's changed. Over the past many years, it's changed the way marketing is done. right? 20 years ago, all marketing is, I mean, have you watched, I mean, Mad Men when it was on TV was one of my
Oh
favorite
God,
shows.
what a great! My favorite episode was when they were challenged by Kodak to create something for the slide projector, the carousel.
Oh, yes.
That by far, and that was probably season 1 or season 2. And yes, I've seen every episode twice to answer the question. What a phenomenal! It was a very interesting day and time in marketing for sure.
Yes, it was. It was. John Draper, the way he tells a story and connects emotionally with the audience is what makes him exceptional, right? That carousel was the exact example, right? Everybody was fixated on the technology. He told a story and he sold that product because it wasn't about the technology, it was about the story. And so we try to do the same, right? We try to focus on the fact that, yes, we have cool technology, but it's really not about the technology. The technology enables you to tell a story. And we want you to tell that story as seamlessly as possible while still delivering very high quality video and audio.
Well, and production values matter, especially when we're talking about the large corporations of the world, the large .coms and .orgs that we all, as consumers in this world, frequent. You know, they can't really afford to damage their brand by having low quality production unless it's been strategized, right? There's always that blip where the low quality adds to the punchline or adds authenticity, but that's the blip. It's not the norm. And I think, the storytelling era has always been there. We've always understood that stories matter from a human level, but I really think the awareness of why story matters is feeling modern. I don't know. I mean, I'm 45 and I feel like, thanks to Simon Sinek with his famous TED Talk with The Reason Why, thanks to guys like Donald Miller and his, building a story brand, there's a new awareness that emotion, it really does drive even the most corporate decisions. And so the technology really is, and by the way, the whole poetry in motion concept, like I tripped into that, but I actually feel like PoE really is a technology that is going to help unlock more of that poetic storytelling that these brands are, maybe it's a bridge too far to say desperate to unlock because they're actually undoing it, but they must. It's how do you guys tell stories for Ikan? Like, I mean, what is the Ikan emotion that you guys are drawing out to get people to see that this technology unlocks something so big for them?
We try to channel enablement. I think that's what we try to channel. We try to disseminate this headspace fear that this is really complicated and this is overwhelming, right? So we channel enablement. We also channel both. We also channel cautionary enablement as well, which is, we talk a lot about don't just think that if you buy the technology that you're going to get the result of that technology. I remember when I got into photography, the first things that I learned early on was don't buy the most expensive camera, don't buy the most expensive glass. Don't try to do that and keep up with the Joneses when you look at those professional videographers on a sports field or, somewhere else, right? You want to really get the concept done. The technology, you can upgrade the technology as the concept is done. I also learned at that time about how important lighting was, right? And the golden hour, right? Dawn and dusk. If you want aerial photography, if you want good photography and good lighting in the natural world, choose dawn or dusk, right? And so we teach enablement in terms of like new technology can make things easier. It can take away some of the barriers and hindrances that you felt existed before, especially with how complex technology in a control room can be. But we also teach cautionary enablement, which is don't just, blindly rely on technology. Know that for any corporation, If you want to produce high quality content, you need an advocate who is creative, who is willing to get uncomfortable learning things and being stretched. And only then can you truly produce the result with the technology you've procured. And we oftentimes, tell our clients to scale up, right? Don't build Rome in a day. Build what is comfortable, scale into your workflow, scale into your production. And I think if you look at most corporate YouTube videos and corporations that tend to keep their YouTube kind of archive for longer, right? Some companies like to delete things after a couple of years, but some of the companies that keep things for 10 plus years, you watch their first video versus their most recent, you see the evolution, right? You see the evolution of quality, and that's done the right way. So yeah, I think that word really captures what we try to achieve.
I think that's there's a certain partnership and maybe even humility in that approach that, you're willing to say that we don't fix certain things, right? We enable a lot, but if you don't have dedicated professionals who will implement the use of this, then our lights will light an empty room, right? I think that's, I like the humility in the approach for certain. What if somebody comes to Ikan and says, okay, look, we've got budget for all of this, and we know we're going to rely on you for the room and the tech in the room. What does your organization tell them in relation to how to approach the creative side and having the right staff members? Do you have a cheat sheet or a rubric or a guru that guides them? And what is that message when they know you're the tech side and the enablement side, but they don't have the other part either?
Mm-hmm. So going back to what I said initially, right? Finding a network of partners is mission critical because we don't make every component of a studio. We make a subset, and we're really good at what we do, but we partner with other folks for other technologies. The cameras is one, the audio is another, and ultimately we are a manufacturer, right? We make, design, and we design, we innovate, we produce very high quality products, but we are not on site to install those products, on site to train you, and so another set of partners. So we have other manufacturing and software partners that we work together with to make sure that our technologies talk to each other well. We also have channel partners. So we're talking specifically about systems integrators, right? There are retail businesses like a B&H that you mentioned earlier, Josh, that are exceptionally good at delivering products to you. But if you're building a studio, that oftentimes is a knowledge base that simply procuring products will not do for you, right? You need to have the knowledge base to install the products, to integrate the products, and do it in a way that complies with local, codes and regulations. And so this is where we partner with a network of systems integrators, AV integrators across America and the world. And we oftentimes recommend local integrators that are close enough to you that they can come on site frequently. They will absolutely need to come on site to do installation, but the closer they are, the easier it is for them to come back and retune or recalibrate the room based on your needs. And so oftentimes our conversations with end customers, with a corporation, with an org, involves also a conversation with their preferred systems integrator. And if they don't have one, we have ones we've worked with for many years that we can vouch for, that we can then recommend to them and work alongside them. So it is a partnership there with the installer, with the integrator, as well as with other manufacturing partners, right? With the camera partners, with the audio partners, with us, the gamut of the video switching, the gamut of other technologies that we don't produce, but that we can confidently say we recommend. The Q-SYS, the Netgears, those partners that allow our products and their products to cohesively work together to deliver ultimately the result of a functioning studio for our clients.
What's your method for finding these people? I mean, you really seem very willing to connect with people and figure out what makes them tick. Like, that's how we met, right? You were like, yeah, I guess I'm down for the conversation. Who's this Josh guy? And then suddenly we're here. So, I mean, you've got a great attitude about meeting people. Is that the secret sauce, or how are you meeting everything from the people at Q-SYS to the integrators? I mean, there's a big system that you've decided to be a part of. And did it already exist and you tripped into it, or are you creating this ecosystem? Like, give me a glimpse of the CEO perspective on that.
Sure. We effectively did create or found the partnerships that we needed to be successful. So that's the short answer. What I embody is what the rest of our company embodies, right? We have a company core value. It's a set of things that describe who we are and our community, our tribe. And we very much, own that, embody that core value across all of sales, all of products, all of marketing, and the operations as well. So yes, we are always open and very engaging. We know that we are stronger when we build partners versus doing everything ourselves. And so just always having that right attitude and not saying no to a meeting gives us the ability to cast our net wide and talk to the right folks and meet the right folks. And we like to work with people that share our values as well. So I can confidently tell you that all of the folks that we recommend and all the partnerships that we have are with other organizations and the people within those organizations that have a similar view of how to conduct business. We see the world as an ever expanding opportunity, and we rarely see anything as a zero sum game, right? We even work with competitors sometimes simply because there's an opportunity that allows all of us to thrive. And so that core value, is embodied not just in myself, but in my sales team, in my product team, in my marketing team, and all the other departments and disciplines within Ikan.
That's awesome. How you said you rarely say no to a meeting and you usually say yes. How do you mind your schedule in order to be somebody who says yes to a lot of this stuff? Because I would imagine you cannot be on 41-hour Zooms a week for a 40-hour work week and then get anything else done. How do you strike a balance personally?
Mm-hmm. Building a team and delegating smartly, I think is what allows me to do what I do and allows others in my team to do what they do. And so we talk a lot about who to delegate what to. There are certain relationships that are near and dear to me. And so more often than not, I will take on those kind of and be the point person. And oftentimes I will delegate those to others, and let them kind of shine and carry on, representing us as a whole. So I certainly don't like to be a one man kind of everything has to flow through me. That is not an ideal way to manage
Right. I agree.
and lead. Right. We want to empower. I want to empower and give folks the ability to own their domains, own their relationships, and continue to advance the company on all fronts.
That's awesome. I think that's good advice. I mean, you're clearly delegating carefully, but probably seems like pretty frequently.
Yes.
How do you, actually, I know you've been there a long time. Is that normal? Is there a long tenure for most of the employees there? Because I'm curious about team building and how you bring on the right personality to be a part of that team that you can delegate to.
The average tenure of our staff is well over 5 years. I mean, I want to say 8 years is probably the average. Yeah, our folks have been with us. I mean, most of the folks have been with us since before COVID, and several years before COVID. We've had to add on some folks after COVID as part of our growth, and they're great additions. And again, they share the company's core values and has worked out really well for us. So like I said, we're very selective in who we bring onto the team. And part of that is really making sure we find the right fits and the people that work well with the folks that are already here. So yes, folks have been with me with the company for many, many years.
Well, and I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around, so you're being very selective. Is there something, is there a way of expressing that selective nature? Because, one of the things that I love on this show is I always end up walking away with something that I can implement in my business life. And of course, in my business, I love hearing about the technology side because it's very relevant for everything that I do and a lot of our peers do. So from a tech side, I'm geeking out hard. But from the entrepreneurship side, I myself have actually, I always find it challenging to find the right mix of people. And I'm always trying to learn how to think about what it means to be selective and how to express what the right selection would be, even to my internal team, as we're all in search for the right person. How do you think about that? And is there a secret sauce for you?
There is no secret sauce. The age-old saying, "Good help is hard to find," is truly very, very real. There is no secret sauce. I would say due diligence and just a thorough review of candidates is what is required. You mentioned Mac McLaughlin. He's told me this before, and it's probably a common saying too. But hire slow and if you have to, fire fast, right? And then that really the core philosophy is you really want to vet a person before they come on board. And I found reference checks to be extremely invaluable. And oftentimes I go beyond what the candidate gives me as reference checks, right? Because that's going to be a pro candidate kind of
100%.
Yeah. So oftentimes you want to search within their LinkedIn and come across and leverage your network, right? And the relationships you've built, because our industry is fairly small, to say, hey, if I know so and so worked at a company, I'll ask other people I know that have worked with that person or may have a second degree connection to get to know that person. I find that those references oftentimes are going to be the most telling. And what I try to ascertain from talking to the candidate as well as the references is, one, are they trustworthy, right? Are they trustworthy? Two, do they take ownership of their domain? And three, do they work well with others? Do they have a long vision of the world? Do they have a vision of the world that it's all about endless opportunities? Or do they have more of a zero-sum mindset, right? And I said that earlier. And oftentimes I find that folks with the zero-sum mindset, they may seem like alpha go-getters, but you find that their longevity oftentimes is not there because they'll make short-sighted decisions, they'll ruffle feathers, they'll put too much pressure on internal staff or external customers, they'll burn bridges for the sake of short-term wins and gains. And so those are kind of the soft aspects that I try to ascertain in addition to just hard competency, right? What's physical hard skills do you have? There's a balance, but I would absolutely say, what I said earlier about trustworthiness and internal motivation, as well as their ability to work effectively with others. Those are mission critical for me. If you don't have those things, there's a good chance something will happen and the tenure with us will not be very long.
I love that it took you so long to get to the hard assets on that question, because I think that's really telling, right? The hard assets, like, do you have the degree? Can you do the math? Whatever, depending on what the job is. But the fact that you spent so much time tells me how important it is to unpack and unlock, are they trustworthy? And that long list. And I think I'm going to challenge my team to make sure that we go find that and actually, publicize that carefully, almost on repeat, because it's a rubric for finding the people that you can run far with, right? I mean, it's you, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to run far, run with others. But you've got to run with those others who are going to stay running with you. And that is really, that's awesome, man. You are a very cerebral person in our conversations. You think very deeply about everything that you say, and I appreciate that greatly. I think more people need to actually have a reason why they say what they say. I think some people just talk.
Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate what you said.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. It's honest. So I'm going to let our audience go in a second here, but friends, if you've been listening to my show at any length, you know that I'm always going for golden nuggets, and I think we got a handful of them. But my favorite so far today really is that rubric that you can walk away with on how to evaluate who you should have in your world professionally. I think that's really instructive for all of us who could be in a hiring capacity ever. But if you've been thinking about going down the road, especially any of my corporate listeners, you are going to be asked by somebody on your team, can we build our own studio? And the short answer is yes, you can. But now you've got a sense of the fact that it's far more doable from a perspective of POE will get you around most permitting issues, not all permitting issues. Talk to your professionals, but I can really, trust me, folks, this is your go-to. You want these lights lighting your space. You want the new merger of AV and broadcast technology just changed the game for you. And if you want to know more, they do have a blog on their website. It's Ican's homepage, right? It has a link straight to the blog, right?
icancorp.com.
Yeah. So go browse it, everybody, and make sure that you're really learning what their value proposition is. I've already been sold. I was a convert eons ago, but now that POE is a thing, I'm like a double convert. I don't know what that means, but it's real. So they've always had my trust, but they even more now that they're leading the way there. James, is there anything else? Is there any thought leadership happening on YouTube or on LinkedIn that our friends should be following?
Yeah. Once a month, that's my aim. I release a thought leadership article. Oftentimes it pertains to the world of broadcast. Sometimes I'll kind of dive into more of what we just talked about, Josh. But yes, follow me, James Tian. You can find me, CEO of Ican. I'm on LinkedIn, and I enjoy connecting with the community and sharing and offering my insight. And I'll add one more thing, because I know your audience, Josh, is entrepreneurs and they're looking to scale their business. Something I've also learned about hiring a good sales force. And oftentimes we think about a salesperson and we think they've got to be a good talker, smooth talker. They've got to kind of be able to talk well. I find that the most effective salespeople are those who are the best listeners. And if I want to list, some of the best experiences where I've been on the receiving end of sales, it's the people that spend most of the time listening, but truly listening, right? And when they summarize let's say you spend 15 minutes talking, and Josh, you're an amazing listener too. You're listening to every word, you're summarizing, you're processing, and you're responding with very wise and good things to say. I found that the most effective salespeople are the best listeners. And if I go into a sales meeting and the customer is doing 70-80% of the talking, and I'm doing the 20%, 30% that's adding value to what they're saying, I oftentimes come out of that sales meeting with the sale itself, right? It's because the customer felt heard and respected, and know that you now understand what they're trying to achieve, and they have that trust and confidence that you will be able to deliver what you say you will to them. That restraint, that humility, I think goes a long way to building that trust. And so, my advice for your entrepreneurial customers, perhaps they're looking to build out a sales force, don't forget that skill set, the ability to listen. I find that to be of greater value than simply being a good talker.
That's amazing. Thank you for adding that. And actually, it occurs to me, with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth, we've been gifted with a 4-to-1 ratio of data input to data output. And a lot of people flip it. They'll talk 80% plus and not use their other senses to their advantage. But we literally were designed to be listeners and visual data intakers and speak less. But here we are in a world that probably has really reversed sales into the negative. And your description is really very sage. So you really do walk out with the sale more times than not on that. I think that's cool.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're engaging in active listening. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, folks. So entrepreneurs, today you will probably have a sales call or an almost sales call. Make sure that you shut up. So I'm going to put it simple. Shut your mouth, open your ears, pay some genuine attention. Don't do it halfway. Lead with your heart. Really listen, because you may find that customer is actually not a customer. Maybe they're a referral partner. Maybe they're something else. Maybe they're just a person in need, and you shouldn't be selling them. You should be doing something else. But you'll look icky if you're just trying to sell them, and that's a terrible look. So do something that's of value. Listen to James very clearly. Listen more, talk less, and be that problem solver. Feedback well. Thank you, James. This is more than I expected. I am so happy, and apologies to any listeners where I was just geeking out and enjoying the tech stuff. If that wasn't for you, every once in a while, this happens because I'm a tech geek, but I feel like you've just gotten a master class on what to do for setting up your eventual studio. Until next time, unicorns, you know how I roll. I don't know who's going to be on the next episode, because when I walk into the studio, I just look at my list and go, oh, that person's coming. But I know that we've vetted them in a way that they're going to add value in your life. So if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't followed, you're not really in our ecosystem, fix that. And then after that, get back to work.